had gone so deep and I didn't know how to get out of it anymore. Loud and clear, the Father said, die. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Desire, and guess what? Today is episode 1 of our series Heart to Heart with Desire. Guys, I'm so excited and I'm so proud of myself that I'm finally doing this, right? Now, a quick disclaimer before I get into the full content of how God told me to die. Please, the phrase God told me is a personal experience, and under no circumstance should anybody use that to build any form of doctrinal persuasion or belief system. People of God, come close. We know that as believers, our doctrinal persuasion should be built out of the rightly divided word of truth, which is the Bible. So when someone says, God told me this, no matter who they are, it is very important to pass whatever they say or view whatever they say within the lights of the written word before we draw any form of conclusion. That is why I want to plead with you to please watch this video till the end and don't skip any part of it, because I wouldn't want you running conclusions based on things I did not see. This is the journey of how I even got to the point where God told me to die. I grew up in the most supportive and loving household. My parents appreciated the smallest things we did, from having good grades in school to doing your chores to just the smallest things you could do around the house. It does not mean they did not shout at us. African parents does not mean they did not rebuke us, does not mean we didn't go through all that, but they did it with so much love that you could just understand their motives and intentions. So it is safe for me to say that I grew up in a mentally and emotionally stable, healthy environment. But this mental stability, will it last? Hey, it did not last. Did my parents stop being nice? No. Did my parents stop being supportive? No. What happened? I grew up, I became a teenager, and I went to secondary school, and the nightmare began. I went through different levels of bullying apart from being physically beaten up. There was the people who just made it a thing to laugh at my looks, my full lips, my big eyes, my voice, and my other things that they considered insufficiencies, right? And then there was the place for people who didn't just like my personality and kept telling me down that I should not feel like that girl because I am not. You know that feeling like, girl, you're not even that girl. Don't try to come here and act like you're too much or anything. I was never timid. I was raised to be bold, expressive, and confident. So when people say that they have insecurities, it does not necessarily mean that they are timid and quiet and reserved. It just means that they have aspects of their life where they are struggling with particular things, or they are struggling to come to terms with particular things. From my experience, I learned that the smallest things really do matter. You know how we watch celebrities on TV, right? And they ask someone, oh, what inspired you? And this person says, it was a schoolmate from primary school, or it was my teacher when I was in 2nd grade, 3rd grade. These smallest things can actually also go the negative, like people talking down on you, people making you feel in a certain way, and it just builds these feelings out from you that after a while become a full-blown attitude. High school did not even make it easier. I still had my moments of doubt, and for me it was because I love to put myself out there. So there was the constant public ridicule and roasting whenever I tried to put myself out there, whether it was a presentation, a campaign, or whatever. When I was in school, I was constantly waiting to close and run back home, because home was that safe space where I could just sit down, enjoy the company of my siblings, tell my parents anything. But out there felt like this dungeon, as I was constantly giving myself to be reminded by these people of these things. Low self-esteem and self-consciousness gradually crept in. I became so self-conscious and insecure about a lot of things. down to the smallest things that will not even matter. Was I always confident? Yes. Was I always bold? Yes. But I had things I was struggling with on the inside. Once something involves me putting myself out there, I become so afraid and I don't even want to do it. I learned from my experience that having low self-esteem or any form of insecurity does not mean that you're quiet, you're reserved, or you're timid. Sometimes that person that you consider the life of the party is struggling with some insecurities. That fun friend is actually struggling with some insecurities. So it's more like there's some aspects of your life that you're struggling with, but it doesn't mean that you don't excel in other things. When I became a young adult, what happened was I had become a full-blown perfectionist and self-critic. I would sit down, create a plan of something I want to do or achieve, and then criticize myself into not doing it. It was more like I enjoyed finding reasons why I could not do something. Friends, family members, people who knew me would suggest great ideas to me, like, Desire, you're so good at this, you don't have to do this, why don't you try doing this? And I'll be like, no, stuff like that is not for me. I'm bigger than that. Sometimes I would just say stuff, but deep down, I knew that I was just afraid of being roasted by anybody. I try to make sure that whenever I want to do something, I am so perfect in it that all you can do is applaud me or clap for me. But guess what? It never always went that way, because everybody can never clap for you, right? But the fear was constantly there. It's like this set of feelings that I was constantly fighting every day. Fast forward to later in my 20s, I started to grow my relationship with God. You know, if you grow up in a Christian home, like we call it, right, we would normally have evening devotion, morning prayers, stuff like that. But we did not really have personal relationships with the Father. It was more like something we just did out of routine. Having that personal relationship with the Father is what I'm talking about. As I started growing my relationship with God, these feelings would not leave me alone. Like the Father would lay in my heart ideas, instructions, tasks, things He wants me to do. Guess what? I will run away from all of them. I'll practically find reasons why I should not be doing any of those things. It was more like my relationship with God opened me up to how far and how deep I had gone with all this self-consciousness. It showed me that I had gone so deep and I didn't know how to get out of it anymore. As long as it involved me putting myself out there, I was not interested. Me put myself out to be roasted. Nah, there's something that happened to me. I started having this burden in my heart. I could do whatever I am doing and not feel fulfilled. Some nights I would not sleep. I would wake up and sit up all night just looking around. There was this burden. Should I call it? Let me call it the burden of purpose. Like, you know what you're supposed to be doing. You know that you're supposed to do these things, but you're not doing them. You're afraid to do them. You're afraid to go out there. Traumas of how when you tried doing things in the past, people got at you, people ridiculed you, people made you feel low, and the burden just became bigger and bigger and heavier in my heart until there was one of those nights I could not sleep. So I sat up. So I just leaned my back against the wall, and it wasn't really a prayer, it was in thought. I was so deep in thoughts. I closed my eyes and I said, Father, how do I do these things in a way that people will love? Because I am tired of running away. While I was still thinking with my eyes closed, loud and clear, the Father said, die. I opened my eyes, and then the Father started having a conversation with me concerning what He just told me to do, to die. That same moment, I stood up, I picked my pen and a book. I started writing down the things the Father was telling me that night as I perceived in my spirit. This book has lasted many years, right? I write some really important stuff inside. And He said, if you really want to fulfill my purpose for you and fulfill my will for your life, you have to die. Die both to the praises and the critics of men. Men will praise you and clap for you even when you are not in my will. And men will hate on you and criticize you even when you are at the center of my will. So your motivation cannot be the reactions or validation of men. Die both to yourself and to external validation. This is how to fulfill purpose. At this point, when I was writing, I started crying. I was responding, okay, but what about this? And what about that? I was asking questions. I felt like there was this burden being lifted up as the conversation was going on. In the subsequent days after that night, as I meditated on the things that the Father had said to me, I learned many more things, which I classified into 5 different sentences. But before I read them out, something happened that same week. I don't know if it is just me. Like I said, everything I'm saying here is based on personal experience, right? Does this thing also happen to you? Like when the Father is teaching you something, or when the Holy Spirit is telling you something, the people that you maybe look up to, the people that you have the same doctrinal persuasions with, they start telling you the same things. Like it's like everywhere you go, there is a stirring in somebody's spirit to tell you the same thing. That's what happened to me that week. After the Father had this conversation with me, all through that week, people were just reaching out to me, telling me how desire died to these things. And then what really stood out for me is this auntie I have. She's not even the social media kind of person, but all of a sudden that same week she made a video, and on that video she was telling believers that it's time to die to external validation. I mean, that same week, like 5 different people were saying the same things to me, not in the same words, but along the lines of that thing. So that's why I'm asking if it happens to you, right? Because it happens to me that when the Father is teaching me something, it's like there is this constant repetition and it keeps stirring up my spirit whenever I hear it. So there is something she said. She said, a dead man does not feel any pain. Even if you carry a dead man and throw him out of a building, you roll him on the floor, you get a whip and flog him, he's not going to feel anything because he's already dead. And that is exactly how every believer should be to external validation and to things that do not edify them to walk in the will of the Father. You would think that after the Father had that conversation with me and I had all these confirmations and emphasis, you would think that the next week I was all over the place doing stuff. That was the difficult part. I realized that dying is not a one-time thing. It's not like, oh, God told me so I'm dead to all these things. No, we're humans, we have emotions. These feelings will not just go away. I realized that it is more about letting go of these feelings and relying on God daily. So we die every day. It's not a one-time thing. When these feelings come up, we rely more on the Father and His ability to work in us, not ourselves. By flesh shall no man prevail. I had this short called Dear Christian. It was basically a snippet of the things that I learned that day, even though that was not when I learned these things, but I just wanted to put some of it out there. So let me quickly read out the 5 aspects that I summarized this dying into. The first, dying to self. Learning how to see ourselves in the light of God's word and not our present situation. This one really stood out for me, and when I was meditating on it during that time, I thought about the story of Gideon, right? He thought that he was the least in his father's house and he was poor and everything. But when the angel of the Lord appeared to him, he just called him a mighty man of valor. So the Father was saying, we have to die to ourselves. In that we stop seeing ourselves based on our background, our education, and our current situation. We see ourselves the way He sees us. God saw Gideon as a mighty man of valor. He saw himself as the least in my Father's house. The second one is God's ability in us works through us, not people's validation. That night, when I was asking the Father, how do I get to do these things? This was one of the things that really stood out for me. He said, my ability in you will work through you. Along with the instruction is the enablement and the ability to fulfill. For example, he says, start a YouTube channel, and then you want to ask your friend, girl, do you think I should start a YouTube channel? And your friend says, no, such stuff is not for you. You stay with what your friend said, who was not there when God was giving you this instruction, and who does not understand the ability of the Father to work in you. So the second thing we have to die to is the fact that we are not capable, and trust that every instruction that comes from the Father comes with the ability to do. The third thing is trying to belong to a belief system based on people's opinion. You know, people ask you questions like, what are your thoughts about marriage? What are your thoughts about divorce? And stuff like that. If someone tells you, if you ask me that question and I tell you my thoughts today, tomorrow my thoughts change. Oh, I didn't know this, my thoughts change. What is going to happen to your belief system? Will it also change? So the Father had to re-emphasize that our persuasion is found within the written word, because that is the thing that will never change. People's opinions will change. The fourth thing to die to, the counsel of the ungodly. The Father took me to Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly. For a moment, I learned for the first time that Walking in the counsel of the ungodly is not limited to taking bad advice from a friend or to have an evil friend, even though that is included. It is more about a mindset. The ungodly, they've created a mindset of what it means in our world to be beautiful. If you don't look like that, you don't feel beautiful. Of what it means to be successful. If you don't do those stuff, you're not successful. What it means to be fashionable, and a lot of other things. And we believers, we're beginning to creep into it. We're beginning to welcome those ideas. We have to die to seeing things through the eyes of the ungodly. The fifth thing that I learned that day is what it really means to believe. What to you, what does it mean to believe? When you say you're a believer, what does it mean? It is basically abandoning ourselves completely to God, because we can't even do it by ourselves. That night when I asked that question, I felt like it was the first time that I actually abandoned that thing to the Father. So that was why when that conversation was going on, I could feel the burden being lifted. One thing I would say is that if you have been like me, but if you're struggling with any form of self-consciousness, trauma, external validation issues, and many other things that are affecting who you should really be, it's time to let the Father help you. It's time to die. We know that it is not going to be easy. We know that it's not going to be a one-time thing, but He promised us that He will not leave, He will not forsake. So He's going to be there to help us through the way. In the course of the conversation that I had that night, one thing I really learned is that fear is a kind of faith. Fear is faith in the negative. The reason why you are afraid that people will laugh, the reason why you are afraid that something will happen is because you believe that it will happen. That is faith, just in the negative. And what I learned from that experience is to do it afraid. I am afraid. I don't know how to look at my camera and talk. I don't know how anybody's going to react to whatever I'm saying, but I'm doing it anyway. Why? Because I'm relying on the Father's help. So it's time to also let the Father help you so that you can fulfill His will and purpose for your life and fulfill it well. And the thing is, the more you face these fears and keep doing it afraid, relying on His help, the more these fears go away to the point where they are replaced with total confidence in Him and full-time experience, because you've been doing it over and over and over again. I just want to pray for you that if you're struggling with any forms of feelings, whether it's things that happened from your childhood, whether it's things that happened later in your adult life that may have shaped some form of ideas and crisis in your life, I pray that you find the courage to rely on the Father's help and get out of these things to the point where the only feelings you ever feel at any point in your life is joy and peace in the Holy Ghost. If you struggle to do it by yourself, you will always feel insufficient. You will always feel like it's not enough. It's time to rely on the Father's help. My name is Desire. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content. If this video has been helpful or relatable in any way, please drop a comment below, like it, and share it with your friends. I'm about to go, guys, but you know that I love you. You deserve the best things of life, and you're always capable of amazing things. See you guys on the next video.